If you had to start this now, let's say you're 21 years old, same thing happens. From a regulatory point of view, would now be an easier time or a harder time to launch this very, very hyper-specialized business?
I don't know if you want me to go there, John.
I do want you to go there.
It'd be close to impossible.
Why?
Because of the fees, because of the regulations and stuff that exist now in the field. When I first started this business, in some ways it's changed a little bit, but it's harder. It would be a lot harder and more expensive. These are what they call Class 1 medical devices, which are the lowest level of regulation. Internal invasive prosthetics, Class 3. But the fees have gotten extremely high. Just to be, I'm a FDA regulated medical device manufacturer. So every year, we could be audited, we can be chased or whatever.
In the Food and Drug Administration.
Yep. We have to be in their database just to sort of have the license to do what we do.
You have to ask government permission to improve the quality of people's lives.
Yes. And so when I first started the business, that cost about $300. Just to say my company name, the contact information, put it in their database. It cost almost $6,000 a year now. A year.
A year?
A year.
So I've known my friend Bob Radocy for almost 30 years or something ridiculous like that. When I had hair, it kind of looked like that. So while I lost my hair, he lost a hand. So I think I won this one. Tell me how you lost your hand.
Well, I was a senior in college, actually, and I was in a program where I was 4.5 years. I was invited, it was right at the end of the year, I was invited to a friend of mine's wedding. I was going to school in South Florida. My friend's wedding, my best friend was in Chicago. I wound up having to take GRE exams because it was my senior year. I didn't get to leave the campus till about noon, and I drove, and I just took off. I had 30 some odd hours or so, 35, 40 hours to get to Chicago. And I was trying to do it on my own. I had a little two-door Mustang coupe, and I figured, 22 years old.
You're invincible.
Yeah,
you're invincible. Of course you are.
I can do this well. Wound up, I pushed myself too far, drove throughout the entire night, 4 o'clock the next afternoon. I fell asleep at the wheel of my car and drove headlong into a fully loaded semi. Came out of it with my life, a little 2-lane road in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. The truck driver hopped out. He saved my life, put a tourniquet around my arm. I would have bled to death on the scene. I was 30 miles from any kind of a medical facility and 60 miles from what turned out to be Bowling Green, where I wound up having elective amputation surgery. I didn't lose my hand, but I crushed my forearm, so there was not enough arm left to.
I mean, that sounds absolutely horrid and emotionally scarring. But let me tell you about losing my hair. That was much more a life or death struggle than, I'm tired of you throwing this in my face like you went and did. No, so here you are, you're 21, 22, and you lose a hand. I mean, did you think your life was over? Do you think, or were you just happy to be alive? I mean, I would imagine the grief for that must have been pretty awful.
You go through a variety of things when you go through traumatic injury like that. What they say is that losing a loss of a hand or injury to your hand is second most only to an injury to your face, because we use our hands for gesture and communications and things. So I had really good support in the hospital. I had a great team. I was in the hospital for 13 days. I had a doctor that my arm looked like a football. When I woke up, I wasn't much aware of what was going on other than signing papers because I lost a lot of blood, unconscious.
Which is when you should be signing papers, of course.
Exactly. But I woke up, no arm, football on the end of my arm. I had a surgeon come in. He was meeting me every day, but the second day he comes in and he starts to unwrap the bandages, and I didn't want to look at what my arm goes. And he was really firm but good. And he goes, Bob, you might as well deal with this now. You're going to have to deal with it sooner or later.
Wow,
I suggested
that's pretty harsh.
It was, but he did it in a kind way that brought me to reality. So I looked at my arm, wasn't pretty, but that got me over that first initial hump of acceptance. I I was dexterous, by dexterous, I could do things with both hands.
You slept with men and women?
Yes. Exactly not.
Exactly.
I was primarily, I wrote right-handed, ate right-handed, but I threw
sports.
I threw left-handed, and I kick left-footed primarily, so I had ambidexterity. So I think that made my rehab a little bit easier.
Yeah, I would imagine.
But I had some good support in the hospital. Things went well, and I also had a background in biology. I studied physiology. I was almost in a pre-med type of program, so I understood the body. I was athletic. I did a lot of activities and a lot of sports when I was a kid.
But I want to talk about your hand.
Yeah.
And now, I never understood when I would see amputees, and your hand is different than hands that I grew up seeing. Most hands I saw, or I don't even know if you call them hands, were two pieces of metal that came out and would do this. They'd open and close, and so you'd pick up things with that. And I never even knew how you did that until my good friend who works with you, Tony Azadakar, one day I'm at your shop, and he goes, "Oh no, this is how it works." And tell me if I got this right. There's actually a thing that goes on your other shoulder. So the wire goes up here, and by moving your shoulder, you can activate a wire on your hand. Is that basically how it works?
Yeah, it's a harness and cable system. It's not unlike what I'm wearing right now. But what we did is we changed everything around. I wore a split hook for about 5 years.
I want to talk about the split hook before we talk about this.
It was the predominant prescription of the time. My devices weren't developed yet, and myoelectric or electric hands were in infancy in the early 70s. They just weren't good technology. They weren't an option for me. So after I lost my hand, I went through personal rehab. I went home over the summer, rehabbed myself, did some exercises and stuff. Couldn't get a prosthesis right away. In those days, it took a while to have a prosthesis made. Decided to wait till Florida when I went back to school to get my prosthesis. When I went back, I did get a prosthesis fit, and I was fit with a split hook and then just a cosmetic fake hand. I'm doing it with this, but it was obviously on my left side.
So you look like the guy from Game of Thrones when he had his gold hand. He just had a big old fake hand. So,
yeah,
but tell me about the split hook, because machinery fascinates me.
Sure.
And what Tony told me was that the strength of that hook, how much it could squeeze together to hold something, and how much pressure you could put in, was dictated by the rubber band around it.
Exactly.
So that as strong as that rubber band was, that's as strong as that grip could be between those two.
Sure.
What's wrong with that? That seems like
Well, it functionally, for a simple, reliable little device for being an assistive device, and they call them terminal devices or end effectors,
terminal device. That is a wonderful bit of public relations right there.
Yeah, real attractive device.
They went on to come up with a new Coke formula back and then. Yeah.
But it was originally developed by a fellow who had lost his hand way a long time ago, back in the 30s and 40s. But you're right. It is held together with elastic bands or springs. It's like a forceps or a little pair of pinchers on the end of your arm. You pull it open, and then it clamps shut. So it has a very
when you're
limited
relaxed,
function.
it's at its most strenuous. Right. But when you flex,
it would pull.
So it's kind of opposite of the way your hand works, right?
Exactly. And two things that I didn't like about it, and I used it on and off for about 5 years and got to use it as well as anyone probably could. But it had limited gripping force, or what you call prehension, and then the shape was all wrong. It was what they call an adduction pinch. So if you smoke a cigarette or something, that's about the only time you use an adduction pinch, is that kind of and it just was, the human hand is designed with a prehensile grasp, opposed thumb, fingers, and tools, and most everything we do, picking up a glass, picking up things, it's an adduction pinch or three-chuck type of grasp. So it was foreign to me.
When you say three-chuck, you mean like what I'm doing with my fingers right now.
Exactly, a three-chuck grasp. And that's the way we handle tools. In fact, supposedly humans developed because of the fact that they had a functional hand and an opposed thumb, and it stimulated their brain because they were able to use tools where other animals weren't. At least that's what I remember reading. So having an adduction pinch or a three-chuck pinch, cylindrical grasp, whatever you want to call it, was what I felt was necessary for me to really be able to do what I wanted to do. I felt that I was being really limited by the technology of the hook, And so I just sought out a different path, and I never envisioned owning a business. I was in graduate school at the time. I did a bunch of patent research, figure out what was around, what had been developed that maybe was never manufactured. Got into a couple different ideas, and then because I had a background in machine design, because in high school I was a
shop guy. Did you do shop?
Well, this was a portion of shop. I was actually a draftsman. So I learned machine drawing. And I actually worked out of high school and through college as a structural draftsman. So I had hands-on paper and pencil design work. I could draw anything for you that you wanted, and somebody could make it when I was in high school.
Oh, how cool is that?
So with that background, my background in biology and all the other things going on in my life, it worked out to, I just sat down and put down some criteria, figured out what I wanted to do, and I designed it, and I took it to a machinist in Boulder. Those days it cost me $700 out of pocket, and I had something built.
And this was just for you?
It was just for me.
And now, when I visited my buddy in your shop, there were lots of things that looked like this. And so there's a little wire hook here. Okay. So when you rest, it's open.
This is unless I click a lock mechanism, it stays biased open, and then you close it consciously. It's called voluntary closing as opposed to a voluntary opening device like a
So in other words, this is absolutely opposite of what you were given, which is you relax and it grips. Here, you have to take the action, you use your muscles, and it grips. And it looks like you can grip lots of different things.
It was far more intuitive for me to go to this kind of a system because that's the way your hand works. You know, you consciously reach and grasp and hold on to things, and you relax and open. So this follows patterns.
How are you doing that right now?
Well, I'm using a system that's just very efficient, an efficient version of the system I originally had. This cable is routed around my arm.
Without moving your hand or your hands, right? Can you close that?
Like that.
And you've lifted up your...
Yeah, I can do it this way. I can
so you subtly it's like playing an instrument, I imagine, that you start learning different ways to do it.
Exactly. And after a while, it becomes very, very natural. And it's not hard to do. It's over 90% efficient. So for me to reach and grasp and pick something up and hold something like that and move it in space and reposition it, it becomes very easy. And it follows the basic biomechanics of the way you work, reaching and grasping and relaxing and releasing. But the other important thing that I realized is that it provides what we'd call biofeedback. When you grasp something with your hand, you have a directly proportional resistance to feeling the biofeedback.
Yeah, you feel it.
Yeah, what you
grab it hard, you grab it softly.
So with this, I grasp. I don't have fingertip touch, but I feel that resistance throughout the system, the harness. So as I'm grasping, as I'm picking up, let's say I'm picking up this little mechanical hand, I can close my eyes and move it in space, and I can feel it, and I'm not going to drop it because I'm consciously holding onto it. And I can feel it. The old split hook system didn't allow you to do that. Once it grasped on, you were cut out of the feedback loop. It was just holding on for you. So it interfered with your ability to really act spontaneously to your grasping and holding, where if I was to pick this up and hold it, and it would start to slip, I can feel that, and I can readjust.
And can you do delicate things with it?
Do delicate things with it as well.
All right, so you didn't notice, but you dropped your mic cover onto your shirt. Can you pick that up with that? And that's just a tiny little...
There we go. Yep.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
That's just a tiny little thing.
But so in other words, you can get big things, but you can also get little tiny, that's a very soft piece of foam.
Exactly.
All right, so you create something like this. What's it made out of, first of all?
This is made out of primarily, the materials we use are, aircraft aluminum. We use aerospace titanium. This is made with stainless primarily. But then we get into other, we use unobtainium whenever we can find it, but it's more and more difficult to find, as you might realize, and especially with all the situations with shipping and everything. And it's very difficult to source these days. So it's basically
made out of what?
Aircraft aluminum, titanium, and stainless.
And unobtainium, which is also
unobtainium,
which is Captain America's shield, if I got it. Good stuff. All right, so you build one of these for yourself. I get that because you're just a selfish, awful guy, and you just want to have a better life for yourself.
Well, you'll notice it's got a very special little hook in there. Now, what can you imagine back in the 70s that might be useful for?
I'm going to say it's a bottle opener.
There you go. That's exactly
I imagine you could also probably hold a joint at some point pretty well with that.
Well, we'll go with the bottle opener.
We'll go with the bottle opener. Oh, that would have been great. How many women could you impress? I'll get that for you.
Made a good impression at the bar, though.
Yeah. So you made one for yourself. Why didn't you just stop there? It's like you made something that improved your life.
Sure.
And then, I mean, now I can't imagine how many people you've helped, but we'll get into that in a minute. You decided to go into business
I improved on
somehow.
a design over a couple years, and then I felt that, I wound up patenting it while I was designing it and such. So I had a patent, and I decided to go to a manufacturer, the largest in the country, and see if they were interested in building it for me. And in those days, not really. They made me offers that just weren't worth my effort, and the money that I had into investment. So at that point in time, I was in between jobs. I was doing things. I was still in graduate school. As I was coming out of graduate school, I just decided, I can make this myself. I went to a prosthetics conference on my own dime in California. I met a bunch of people there. I was wearing a device that was a precursor to that. I showed it to some people.
And everybody's like, what is that? What is that? What is that?
They'd never seen anything like it, and they encouraged me to go after it. And so I came back. I actually was working with an assistant professor at the time who was kind of a mentor of mine at the University of Colorado. We started a company together. We hawked our houses against an SBA handicapped assistance loan. And back in those days, the 70s, loans were 11, 12%.
Right.
We got a
Don't worry, they'll be there pretty soon again.
We got a 3% loan.
You gloss over that little part, because it's in the past for you. You put your home up. When people hear about businesses, it's a successful business now. You've helped, I can't imagine, thousands of people. But there in the 70s, you took your piece of the rock and put it up on the block in order to take a gamble on this. Did that scare you?
Well, I think that's always in the back of your mind, but I was excited enough about the project. I knew how well it worked, and I wanted to share it with other people, so I think we could make a go of it. I had a tremendously supportive wife, which, made a lot of difference because we still, I was making almost nothing to get started with this, and she at least had
So kind
some
of a
income.
Stupid wife, it sounds like.
Not at all. She's beautiful, and
So she had faith in you.
absolutely.
It makes a difference. All right, how much money did you guys raise, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, the loan was for $150,000, and we figured that would get us through about a year, maybe 18 months. And we went through it. We started to make some money. I felt if I could sell 100, we built 100 of the first product. And I was thinking if we could sell all of those, we'd be able to make it. We didn't sell quite as many as we wanted. We operated through about 1983, and I started to go bankrupt. Just wasn't able to make enough money to make it go, to pay both of the families. My partner at the time wanted to go on and finish his PhD. We got into a jam like that, so I decided, and we went to a venture capital firm in Boulder at the time. It was called Colorado Venture Capital, and then it was called Sachem, and then another company. They got excited about us. We wound up doing a venture capital offering. It was supposed to be $300,000. Wound up only generating about $130,000 from the offering, but it was enough money to get me going. I gave up 25% of the company to do that. But we needed to do it, and I had some encouragement from an occupational therapist out of Fort Collins who I knew, named Louise White, wonderful lady. She's passed on now. She said, you need to take your technology and develop it for children. And no one had ever developed a small grasping device for children that used the same technology that I was introducing through what this is called a grip.
Because I'm imagining once you got the prosthetic fit to your arm, it probably hasn't changed much over your life. But a kid continues to grow and change.
Yeah, it's a challenge for children because they're needing a new prosthesis every year, 18 months.
Is that where you came up with this?
That was a device even before this one, but it was a precursor to this. Which is a little light touch hand.
Which is exactly the same thing, isn't it? But it looks.
It's just got a different exterior to it.
And it's
a simple
rubberized
simple little lever functional grasping device.
But it's the size of a kid's hand.
Yep.
Not an adult's hand, and not what did you call that hook again? It was
which is a split hook.
Split hook.
Yeah. So we came up with something that was different than this. It looked a little bit more like this, made out of rubber. So it was initially just narrow, and then that was in the 80s when we were able to improve our molding techniques. Tony got to be really creative with learning how to do molding. This is polyurethane, custom poured polyurethane. We figured out how we could make something like this without having to build like very expensive tooling. We built our own tooling, and so we started. But you're right; it's just a lever. It's exactly like this, except very small. very functional.
But by having something that looks more like a hand, I would imagine for a kid makes a difference, and that you could start to play like a kid much more.
The very first, I had a wonderful opportunity when I first showed the precursor to this, what we called an Adept terminal device. Imagine just this, sort of without the other two fingers and a little bit more shaped like this. Yeah. I put it on a boy named Alex who was in North Glen, and I worked with him through Children's Hospital because I was part of their clinic at the time. And no one had ever put a device like this on a child. So we had a first prototype. I went to visit his parents at their house in Thornton. He was using a little tiny hook. He was a good little prosthetics user. Most children are born without hands. They don't have traumatic injury.
Okay, so they don't. It's not like what you went through.
They grew up being who they are.
Yeah.
But he was a good little prosthetics user. He had met me once before. I put this device on the end of his arm, got him all hooked up, gave him some demonstration, and he went and he grabbed something on the table. I can't remember what it was, and his eyes got like this big. And all of a sudden, he just went around grabbing everything. For the first time, he had that feedback. He had that natural, spontaneous reaching and grasping. When I saw that, in those few seconds, I realized we'd succeeded. We would be able to benefit. We would be able to benefit children. It was a spark of his imagination, the light going on in his eyes. He ran around the room, grabbing everything, hopped on his tricycle, rode around the room.
Oh, that must have been...
it was
his parents must have been...
It was incredible. It was incredible.
So from that evening, go back to when you first designed this. How much time was that between...
That would have been almost a little over 10 years.
So 10 years. Yeah. And at that point, did you go...
Company, that would have been 83. It would have been about 5 years. Right. About 5 years.
So 5 years, and did it hit you then? This company is going to survive?
Yes. Yeah, 83 was our turning point. When we were able to do that closing, I brought out the children's devices, first pediatric products, and I just knew after that, my partner had left, but I knew that we were going to be successful. I knew it wasn't going to be a quick road. It's a really small market. There's not that many people in the world without hands, which is good. That's fine. I can work with a limited market, but we knew that at that point I knew we were going to succeed. It was a matter of perseverance. A lot of people have complimented me. You stuck with it, and I'm also a bow hunter. Bow hunters have to have a lot of perseverance.
A lot of patience too.
And patience. They're both.
All right. So I'm imagining that your favorite Bond movie must have been Diamonds Are Forever. No. It would be Live and Let Die, because one of the villains had a prosthetic hand.
Yeah, that was a good movie, I believe. And then there was another one that was done with Tommy Lee Jones, that was done with Harrison Ford, where there was a guy. They always make prosthetic guys the bad guys, though. For the most part.
Let me ask you that question. I mean, look at this thing. I would imagine that ever since this has happened, you get a lot of kids go, and a lot of their mothers go, don't look. And knowing you probably go, yeah, come over here and check this out. But was it weird? I mean, do you feel that people are always looking at?
You just grow up. You just become accustomed to that. But you use it to your advantage, and I use it to... I find it to be valuable because kids are really dead honest, and they'll look at you, and the mothers you could see the eyes, or the dads, oh my gosh, I'm going to offend this man. So I just kneel down, get eye level with the kid, and say, hey, have you ever seen anything like this? And then I glance at the parents to make sure everybody's okay. And the kid, I'll say, come on, it's made out of rubber. I said,
it's going to rip your nose off.
No, I say what gets kids, it's a robot hand. Robot is the word that kids understand. Prosthetic, what's that? But robot hand, that brings them in, and then they'll touch it, and I'll go, well, pull on this and see how it works. And that's
awesome.
what... And I really enjoy doing that because kids want to learn and they appreciate that, and it teaches them that there's people in the community that are different than them, but they're really not different than them.
Medical advancement in this country, we always talk about, if only we had socialized medicine. My sense is, if we had socialized medicine, there'd be a lot fewer of these hands out there.
That's a really interesting point.
Tell me if you think I'm wrong. You're much closer to this.
No, I agree with you. When I first went to Germany many years ago for a prosthetic conference, I sit in on a group of people who, and they were just raving about this man who had just been fit with a very nice electric hand. And they talked about how long, it was 6 months, it was going on a year. He was independent, he was living at home. And I sat in the audience going, in the United States, this person had been independent in 2 months using a body-powered device instead of this electric hand. So, my feeling was, so your answer is right, that the issue with socialized medicine, in my opinion, is that the issue that it can be the reason it can be problematic is because somebody else is deciding what you can have in their medical scheme. And they may not be have the same, they may not be amputees. They may have never used a prosthetics device in their lifetime. And so someone with no knowledge of what it takes to use a device is making decisions for you. And that's what I fear that would happen. So you're right on in regards to your assessment that I don't think it's a healthy way to go.
For me, it's just amazing that you were able to say, I need something different, and you built it basically in your garage. And then you built up this company it's just an amazing thing. What if instead of you falling asleep at the wheel and losing your hand, it was a musician who did? He wouldn't have had the skill set of drawing, engineering. He wouldn't have had the skill set to draw machinery. He wouldn't know how to do these things. Pardon the way this is going to sound, I'm really glad this happened to you, because if it had happened to me, one, I don't want that to happen to me, but number two, I don't have the skills to do this. I wouldn't have even thought of this. Fortuitous might be the way to put it.
Yeah, I believe in a lot of ways I've been blessed in regards to unusual set of circumstances. I had an interesting educational background that was really mixed. I was always kind of an art person, did a lot of drawing and stuff. Grew up in 1950s, really healthy America. Grew up mostly with Italians, John. My whole neighborhood was Italians. But played football, baseball, in the street, all those kind of things. So I had exposure to lots of sports. Gave me the ability to have insight into a lot of things. Losing my hand was another experience, but with that mixed background, I constantly reflect on that. And then the other thing that made me realize it, and it was a long time ago that I made the realization, was that I realized that without knowing it when I started, I represented the majority of the market that I was actually going to sell to. In other words, there's more people missing one hand below their elbow. That's the market. That's the majority market. There's not that many people, 3-4% missing both hands, people missing hands above the elbow bilaterally. But I happen to be designing things for myself. I just happen to be in the majority.
How many units have you sold in these decades?
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
More than 50?
Oh, yeah. We've sold thousands, probably tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah. And we sell worldwide, we have for a long time.
And the company, TRS?
Well, we're fill hour TRS now. I had the ability to, I'll be 73 in March. I had the ability to, I wanted to look at a closeout sort of a plan, but I wanted to make sure that my product line kept on, my employees were taken care of, and that I still had input and help with the transition. So through next year, 2022, I'm full-time. But we sold out to a very good company called Fill Hour.
Just as long as Tony gets laid off, that's all I want.
Without Tony, the company would cease to exist.
Don't tell him that. All right. So I'm going to take some guesses on this.
Okay.
So I visited your shop, and Tony was showing me something like this. I think it had more of a hinge in it. I know what this is. One, you can spank your kids or somebody else with it, which is very important.
Absolutely.
This is for swimming.
It is.
So if I get it right, going forward, it collapses, and then when you push back, it opens. Right. What's this part for?
That's just a limiter on this particular. It just prevents the fin from going in the opposite direction.
Okay.
So, the concept was actually patented by a Canadian prosthetist in the 80s, but its design was far too complex.
I could have fun with the word prosthetist.
You could.
Yeah.
he came to us to manufacture it, and I said, your design, which was 4 fingers with fins in between, is a brilliant design, but it's too complicated to make, and it'd be very difficult to make in different sizes. And so once I saw what he was going, I said a butterfly wing concept would work the same way. And we can shape it down to different sizes to duplicate palm displacements, which, you don't want something too gigantic on the end.
You don't want something the size of a tennis racket because you'll swim in this circle.
Exactly.
But if you don't have something, you'll swim in that circle.
But most people who are missing their arms, pronation and supination, not a lot of people understand it. We don't have wrist rotation. We have forearm pronation, supination. It's the radial ulna of our arm rotating that allows us to rotate our what we call wrist rotation.
Right.
Well, if you're missing more than 50% of your arm, you can't do that. And so if you're in the water with a paddle's a great idea, but if you're in the water with a paddle and you can't feather that paddle in the water through pronation or supination, you flounder and you exhaust yourself in the water. So his concept was brilliant in that it allowed water to pass through in one direction and then resist in the other. So we just reduced it to a simpler concept, butterfly wing, and it works the same way, simpler to build. We've sold thousands of those, actually.
That is amazing.
It's a real simple.
I was in your shop once, and I was looking at something so people could play baseball. And what you had was basically like a lacrosse cup, and it was just a lacrosse thing. And that way you could get a grounder, you could get something up high.
Well, it was the same concept, actually. We went to a major lacrosse stick company called STX. We bought the heads, the lacrosse stick heads for them. Mm-hmm. We modified them. We put bigger nets in them. But the concept was the same. When you catch a baseball, and you probably played baseball when you were a kid, I actually was in the Little League. I went to the World Series when I was 12 years old.
Really? No,
yeah.
I was too busy watching reruns of Star Trek in my mom's basement. That's why I have no coordination today.
When you play baseball and you catch a ground ball, you supinate and you catch a ball below your waist. To catch a ball above your waist, you have to pronate.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, that's if you have what a traditional glove would be, you would literally have to turn it on your arm to get it to position right.
It's the ball, you have to flip your arm to catch it, or flip your arm to...
you can do that, and I played center field. You can do that when you're in center field. You have that couple seconds to do that. When you're playing shortstop or second base...
It's coming right at your head. Yeah.
You better react. So that concept was to eliminate the pronation, the need for pronation, supination. The pocket, the mesh pocket on that high fly, what we call the high fly fielder, that lacrosse stick head, was flexible enough. It worked in both directions. So you could just spontaneously
react. So you could catch it like this,
or you could
catch it like that because
without thinking about it. And it was just a really simple idea.
Have you ever thought, how many people got to play ball that, the day before they couldn't play ball? All right, I'm going to take a guess. All right, and this is scary as hell. I got to tell you, this is definitely something from a Bond movie. I think I know what this is, and I'll tell you why. Because I know in studios, if you have a boom mic, you sometimes have something like this that's on top of a mic stand, and you can put this long thing into it, and it holds it right there. My guess, this is so you can shoot pool.
It actually does work for shooting pool, but that wasn't why it was designed. I'll put it on the end of my...
This isn't a sex toy or anything,
No, it's not a sex toy, John.
All right.
Here, let me put it on the end of my arm. I brought this along. So this was...
Whoa, stop. How quickly did you just do that?
Pretty quick. This is what they call a disconnect wrist. We build one of many, but it's just a system that I can unlock, lock, and interchange this device.
So it's just that fast?
That fast, yeah.
That's amazing.
This is called a Helix. I went to... this is a great little local story. Denver Metro has an industrial design course. Denver
Metro College.
Yeah, right here in Denver.
Which is now, I think, called Metro University?
It could be. They may have changed it. It's Denver Metro U, maybe. So I went down and I had talked to their professors, and I said, we have some interesting projects here. Do you have any students, classes you'd like to help us? I'll give you some product concepts your students can run with them. And I work with engineering students all the time. I work with CU. I'm working now with School of Mines. Work with Florida Gulf Coast University. I like to work mostly with engineering students, and we give them projects. And I just love doing it and challenge them with a design project. So I went to Denver Metro, and they have an industrial design class. And I said, we had 3 or 4 projects, but I went to that class, and there was maybe 8, 9 kids in that particular group. I wanted something to hold a hockey stick. And I wanted it to be flexible. So this, if I was to put a shaft into this has some really interesting characteristics. Anyway, this student comes up with an idea, which we call the Helix, to hold a hockey stick. And you can actually just snap a stick right into this and pull it out. It also works really well for a lacrosse stick or anything cylindrical. You can put a garden hose through it. You can hold tools with this. You can use it for a pool cue. Works on all of those things. But the interesting thing about it is when you torque it, it's like an old Chinese finger puzzle. It actually grabs. So you can slide it up a shaft, torque it, and it grabs on, and you can move it, and it grabs on.
That's ingenious.
It's really ingenious. We wound up working with that student and patenting it, and we pay him royalties still for coming up with this design.
Really?
So we've worked in that regard. But we call it the Helix. It's very flexible.
All right, so I was close.
Yeah.
I was really close. And also the idea of a hockey player with a metal arm, what could go wrong? And what possible damage could... All right, so you just pop that in and out, and you can spin it around. So there's a gear here, so you can move it to any
it allows you
angle.
to interlock it in different positions and rotate it, and it rotates under load. I'll put something else on here, too. This is really gnarly looking. So this is for...
Wait. All right. So I once had a real job. I actually had to work for a living. And we call these roto-locks. And in roto-locks, it was a way to get trussing together. And so you'd roto-lock, and you could put a pipe there, a batten there, and hang lights or do scaffolding. But we called them roto-locks, and you could do some pretty clever things. So I'm assuming that is so you can like hang off of a building indefinitely.
Well, this is how
it moves.
Yeah, this also has a pivot on the wrist as well. We just added that in the last year or so. Great story. The precursor to this is called the Black Iron Trainer. We made something called the Black Iron Master. Before this, I didn't bring it.
Don't tell me you're not making sex toys. Don't tell me that.
Well, the Black Iron Master was developed. I had a guy call me, lived in Florida. He was a semi-pro bodybuilder. His name was Mike. And Mike was using one of our all-steel devices like this to try to lift bench press. And he said I couldn't stay stable enough on the bar. So I said, well, I'm in the gym. I know I do a little bit of weightlifting. I go, what kind of loads are we talking about? And the guy goes, well, I can't break 500 pounds.
The guy was pressing 500 pounds.
Yeah. And I went, I didn't even know that was humanly possible. And he said, yeah, weightlifters, pro wrestlers, pro football players will work out with those kind of loads. And he said, well, can you modify this device that I had to do that? And I said, Mike, let me think about this a little while. And so we researched out industrial clamps like you're talking about. And we found the bigger version of this, which was designed to hold pipe from ceilings.
Right.
Conduit like you're talking about. And we found one in an industrial catalog. It was rated for 1,200 pounds. We said, well, that should be reasonable force enough to hold. I don't know any human that's ever going to handle 1,200
pounds. Does it rip out of its housing?
Never. Well, if it's made right, no, it would never do that. I've never actually heard of that happening because prosthetists are really good about building arms. But the other device, the bigger one, actually weighs half a kilo. You don't even need to put weights in it. You can just do curls with it on the end of your arm and build up muscle. And we built it for this guy. It's a great story. He went back. He got so excited about it, he went back to bodybuilding. And he was a big guy. He was 235, 240, his weight class. In 2 years, he got back into full competition. He won the world championships in the Arnold Classic. He benched 660 pounds. I believe his record still stands today. Now he's over 50. I think he's maybe 55 or 56. He went back to a master's class. He still benches, I think, over 500 pounds.
All I can imagine is, when they hold it like this, and then they drop it down sometimes.
No, that's for deadlifting. The bench pressers pretty much put it back on the rack for this kind of stuff. But anyway, yeah, so this was a follow-up device.
And why do you need the play in it?
Well, it just gives you, when you don't have a hand, you don't have the wrist movement. So it allows you to go through a greater range of motion with a barbell. And it just takes the torque and load off your joints.
Talk to me about liability, because you're changing people's lives, but you've got to be open to all sorts of lawsuits and liabilities when something doesn't do what you want it to do.
It's possible, certainly, but I think I would just say we're lucky that we try to do good things for people. We try to give them products that make their lives better. And we've never had an issue with anyone ever having any issues with our products. Of course, we put the time and thought into them. You know, when it came to something like this, you bolt onto a bar with this, you don't come off. Right. You know, people said, well, you have to have a quick release. Well, there's liability with quick release. Think about a ski binding. Yeah. Once you build a quick release into it, somebody's got to be liable for whether it releases or not. When you lock yourself onto something like this, you have the consciousness of being locked on.
All right.
Now that's another cool device as well.
All right, so this one is basically the same as this, but that's light. This has a really nasty pull to it. This takes a lot of, and wait a second. And it's got this weird adjustment here. Oh, you have a quick adjustment to, I have no idea.
Okay, so this device is called JAWS, and
named after Jaws.
Named after Jaws, because this took 5 years to develop and build.
It was in 2 different Bond movies, by the way.
Yes. So I went to the dark side when I developed this, actually. So I talked to you about voluntary closing, which is what I use.
Right, which is when you do an action, it closes. It doesn't.
This device actually.
Oh, this does the opposite.
This device actually is a pull-open device. So the reason why did I design this? And I had a lot of pushback not to invest the kind of effort and stuff into this from certain staff members that didn't understand it. But it went to the dark side.
My buddy Tony. You've seen Tony.
But
I told you he was
responsible for making it a success. So JAWS, the reason I built this is I was having a lot of people, I talked to people missing hands all the time. So guys that were wearing these very fancy electronic bionic hands.
Yep.
They're okay. I don't wear a bionic hand because I don't feel it meets my needs. They're a nice technology, but I can't do the things in my life that I want to do with a bionic hand and rely on it. And a lot
Luke Skywalker has a bionic hand. Yeah, he does very well with it.
But it does, but nothing exists quite like that. So people are sold when they first are in a traumatic injury. In many cases, they buy this very expensive technology. Insurance pays for it. $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 for an electric hand.
Is that because there's a grief that you have for your actual hand? So if you have something that looks a bit more like a human hand, it feels better?
Now, people have always just wanted to develop hand-like prosthetic devices. It goes back, you can go back 150 years, longer than that, and see back to the days of medieval times where people made knights. They fabricated a hand that clamped around a sword that looked like a hand. It's just the way people went. They wanted to design something that looked like a hand.
Got it.
And bionic hands do that.
But you being an engineer, you being a very physical guy, function beat form.
Absolutely, and reliability important as well. And electronic hands have a 20% downtime. That's just statistically. So, do you want to be 20% without your hand or some other body part? Probably not.
I mean, I've been years without some body parts.
So anyway, guys were coming to me and talking to me. Said, I want to ride snowmobiles. I want to ride personal watercraft. I want to ride ATVs, and I don't want to do it with this electric hand because I'm going to destroy it, and it doesn't give me the kind of performance that I need. And I said, well, I can put one of these on. I can do all of those things with this prehensile.
You ride a motorcycle?
Yes.
And this is your clutch hand?
Yeah, but I moved the clutch.
Move the clutch over here.
So this clutch is your and throttle with the same hand and just hold on with the
clutch and throttle for the same hand?
Yeah, it's actually pretty easy, and it's pretty intuitive because you pull in and throttle down and pull in and roll out and expand it. You can pick it up really quickly.
No, I don't think I can, but I'll trust you on it.
So they were coming to me, but they said, so they've been using electronic hands. I don't want to wear a cable and harness system. Okay, so they wouldn't use something like this even though it would work for them. So I started to think where I could go with that. So I realized I needed to design something that would push on, push off, but that also had the capability of being operated with a cable. So this is operated with a cable as well. I can pull this open with if I want to hook my cable into this, I can operate this by pulling it open, pulling it closed, but I don't have to have that. I can use it upside down. I can use it right side up. I can pull it open, but I also wanted to give it even greater function. So we designed this system. We call it a vector principle. It wasn't developed by me, but it was developed by myself and a professor at the University of Colorado that I work with. So what we're doing is you press on this and you can shift it, and it doubles the amount of force. So for me to pull that open now takes twice as much energy as it does in this thing. So what does that mean? So you snap onto handlebars, then you can simply shift up. Now you're going to be holding on a lot tighter, but it never locks. Under some load, you flip your ATV, whatever, under some load,
so just like a ski binding, I'm on the ATV, I'm on the motorcycle, I'm on whatever, and it goes. You don't want to be attached to it when it goes off the cliff.
Right. At some point, you're coming off. But Jaws, amazingly enough, this has been the most successful device we have ever designed and built. I sell more Jaws.
Really?
We build more of these than we build anything else. So I'm really happy we did it.
What does that cost?
This goes out the door. I would give you a better perspective. Retail, it's about $2,500 for this device. That'd be the final price.
That's not that wild, given durable medical goods.
No, it's not.
And this one?
That's pretty much. That's actually right in about the same range.
Wow.
Certain of these devices, but then you can pick up other devices like this. These are $1,000, $900.
What's that one?
Okay, so this is a different device.
Wait.
Yep.
All right, so you basically have it's a ski boot thing here, basically.
It's just a ratchet strap system.
You can lock it in, and then you can.
That'll handle about 150 pounds.
Wow.
So what that's designed for, that's another fun story. I had a father in Boulder come to me, and his son wanted to shoot a bow and arrow. We're going back.
And you're a bow and arrow
12,
guy.
And I shoot a bow and arrow. But I shoot a bow and arrow with a modified prehensor. But he didn't want to use anything like that. He wanted something specific to hold a bow. And he was local, and I figured, I'll work with this gentleman. So I cut some big hunk of rubber, cut it out, and made this little prehensor thing that looked like that. And then it didn't hold on to the bow well enough, so we decided we could put a ratchet strap around the front of it. So we developed it, and it's called the Ishi. Ishi was the name of the last known Native American Indian that lived alone in the wild. It came out in the early 1900s. That came out of the woods. He was the last Native American, and he taught white people how to make and shoot bow and arrows. We kind of relearned it all. So I named it after him. And it's interesting just in the sense, it's a very simple device, just a rubber grabber that you can snap on and off. We use it for fishing rods and stuff as well, but it just goes around. But it's designed, the aperture, the opening in it is actually not in line with your arm. It's designed so that if I was to put this on for a left-handed bow and hold it like that, the bow allows it to rotate, it rotates in line with your eye. Because when you pull a bow and arrow, you don't want to force it in this direction. You want the bow to rotate in line with the eyesight in your hand so it doesn't induce any torque into the riser. I'm getting a little technical, but...
What was the biggest challenge? I mean, every business owner has those, I can't sleep tonight because we're on the edge of blank. When did that happen for you? Or did it ever? Or did you just start this and after your first near bankruptcy, everything was fine?
No, there's always been those epiphanies, there's hurdles that you hit and things. But again, perseverance. We've always been able to pretty much, not every product that I've ever developed has come to fruition. We've hit some dead ends, not a lot, maybe 10, 12% products that just never worked out the way we wanted. But we keep pushing, we keep modifying and improving, and we usually figure stuff out. So that's that's sort of the story, I suspect.
You and I were talking. And some of the companies that are competitors, even the one that maybe you're working with now, they do this kind of rubbery stuff, pardon me, but something about doing it in Colorado is an advantage. Explain that to me. Sure.
Well, polyurethane is a synthetic polymer. It's a synthetic rubber. It has really unusual characteristics, but it was originally designed, I started to use it in 1980. It was used mostly for industrial purposes, rollers, things that needed to have hard, durable bumpers and things
Right.
like that. But I saw a value in it for trying to create a flexible rubber hand that I used to
what
use.
you have here for small
soccer.
kids. It opens.
We've developed it. It's evolved, and polyurethane is a miraculous material. It's not difficult. It's difficult to make in the sense to give it the kind of quality that we have. We use a lot of proprietary techniques and formulas, but it's a relatively simple formula of 2 or 3 chemicals you put together. But in Colorado, the material is also it's hygroscopic. It absorbs water. So the chemicals that you're using in the lab can be absorbing moisture while you're actually making it. And so one of the advantages of being able to produce high quality polyurethane products in Colorado is we have just a very limited amount of moisture in the air at the time. If I was to try to produce the products that we make in polyurethane and in Chattanooga, where my parent company is, or in the southeast or in the south where there was moisture, we'd probably have to build a custom lab that handled moisture to create the environment that to get the kind of quality, the surface characteristics of the material and stuff. So we figured it out, and we do a really good job with it. We produce the best quality polyurethanes in prosthetics in the world, and we were the first company really to use it, and we were the first company to actually use it for biomechanics. So not only can you use it for cosmetics, but it's an elastomer.
Yeah, it is.
It replicates joints. So when we put it into something like the Helix, what this does is it not only holds onto something, but it replicates the motion and the feel and the elasticity of your wrist and your forearm. And we can swing a baseball bat. I've got golf devices made out of this stuff. The best way I can describe it is it feels a lot like your human limb, as opposed to just being a mechanical floppy joint.
We talked to you about war. I've got to imagine what we've done in Iraq and Afghanistan, and that a lot of your customers have been veterans. Would I be right?
I wouldn't say a lot, and we're lucky that it's not a lot, really honestly. Actually, a small percentage of our customers are vets. And the reality is that there's not that many vets that have lost their hands. Luckily, there's been a lot more traumatic lower extremity injury than there has been upper. I'm not diminishing it at all, but it's good in that a lot of people haven't lost their hands. But we do serve veterans. We serve them directly through VA facilities. We serve them through Walter Reed, Brooks Army Medical Center directly. And Walter Reed, actually, we developed 2 products around requests that flowed through the military. We developed the first ever kayak device, which I don't have here to show you.
A kayak device to hold a paddle?
Actually, hold a paddle works extremely well. A real simple, inexpensive device. I've got videos on our website showing how to use it. And then they came back to us and they wanted to hold firearms. God, we talk about firearms, right? But so they challenged us. They needed something that would hold a long gun, not a pistol, long gun, shotgun, because when they were bringing veterans back, the veterans were trained in firearms use, and they wanted to shoot. They like target shooting. It's a pastime. It's a recreation. So we developed something called you'll like this name, the Lamprey gun turret.
Lamprey? Why lamprey?
Well, because lampreys have those toothy kind of mouths. You know, lampreys. I
don't know what a lamprey is.
A lamprey's actually.
Again,
I think it's actually like an eel.
Informative years, mom's basement, Star Trek. I have no idea what a lamprey is.
A lamprey is a very ugly looking. It's not an amphibian. It's actually more like an eel that's got almost a circular mouth, and a lot of them in the Great Lakes, they stick onto salmon. They'll go up and grab onto them, and they just suck the internals right out of them.
Wow.
But it's got that very toothy kind of mouth, and it also sounds cool. Very aggressive looking. So the lamprey gun turret is a yoke, a flexible yoke made out of the same kind of polyurethanes with ribs in it that you snap your gun down into it. But it doesn't come up and interfere with the scope, doesn't interfere with the grasp of the barrel. But it allows you to snap it onto the bottom, the forearm of a gun. It has adjustability, so it's mounted on a stainless steel ball and socket. So if you want to use it for rigid bench shooting, you can do that. But it allows you to shoot above your shoulders, designed to be safe control of a firearm, a long gun or a shotgun. And we did it for Walter Reed. We sell lots of them every year.
That's incredible. So, do you deal with a lot of people? I get it if you were born without a hand, and then one of these devices comes and you go, oh my God, I can do these things. And it's probably, you you didn't lose anything, you only gained something. But a lot of your customers lose something. How much are you involved with the grief, the emotional part of, I don't have my hand. I mean, you were ambidextrous. Most people aren't. You lose. If I lost my right hand, I don't know how I'd.
You'd evolve, but
I'd evolve.
As much as I can be would be the way I say it. I don't get being a wholesale manufacturer primarily. I don't talk to as many people as I like. I'm even though my background, I have a background in therapy. I can consult with people, but I do it as much as I can. And the more people that call me and speak to me personally, the more I get to be able to be a resource and a mentor and just be a resource to them. And not just what to put on the end of their arm, not just the terminal device, but to make sure that they have, the most important part is this socket. And I'll just show you this really quick. This is really cool technology.
Whoa. What did you just do?
So this is, you're familiar with...
Can you smuggle drugs for me?
I will not do that. But this is BOA. You're familiar with BOA maybe on golf shoes or hunting boots or anything. Nope. BOA is a Colorado company here. They build a control system that replaces Velcro and lacing. So this knob pops in and out, and it controls the cables on the side of this prosthesis. So the fit of my prosthesis, if you watch this, see how the
you're just okay. I have seen those on shoes and
exactly.
Boots and.
We went to BOA, who's right actually here in Denver, 12 years ago, and said we wanted to introduce BOA into prosthetics, and BOA said, well, we're too busy with Nike and Adidas, go away. Well, about a year, 18 months later, they came back to us and they said, well, we're ready to talk to you. So we started to introduce BOA technology into prosthetics in the form of kits. And now we don't use it, we don't anymore. We transferred that technology to another company out of Steamboat called Click Medical, and Click Medical sells kits so that prosthetists can build this kind of technology right into the arms. So it's really cool. You can have an arm that can adjust your pressure. So I can slide into this. Let's say I go to the gym. I want extra suspension. And that's the most important thing, having a really critical fit. If your arm doesn't fit well, you can't do anything with doesn't matter what's on the end of it. So having an interface, which is a custom interface socket, is the most important part of the entire prosthesis, followed by what you put on the end of it. And in that way, good fit, good suspension. BOA enhances. It's taken technology and prosthetic suspension to another level. And more people, I talk about BOA technology all the time. It'd be like having an adjustable fit to your boot. And they do that with ski boots now and racing snowboard boots, et cetera. So
it's amazing. All right, let's wrap this up a little bit. But
sure.
If you had to start this now, let's say you're 21 years old, same thing happens. From a regulatory point of view, would now be an easier time or a harder time to launch this very, very hyper-specialized business?
I don't know if you want me to go there, John.
I do want you to go there.
It'd be close to impossible.
Why?
Because of the fees, because of the regulations and stuff that exist now in the field. When I first started this business, in some ways it's changed a little bit, but it's harder. It would be a lot harder and more expensive. These are what they call Class 1 medical devices, which are the lowest level of regulation. Internal invasive prosthetics, Class 3. But the fees have gotten extremely high. I'm a FDA regulated medical device manufacturer. So every year, we could be audited, we can be chased or whatever.
In the Food and Drug Administration.
Yep. We have to be in their database just to sort of have the license to do what we do.
You have to ask government permission to improve the quality of people's lives.
Yes. And so when I first started the business, that cost about $300. Just to say my company name, the contact information, put it in a database. It cost almost $6,000 a year now. A year.
A year?
A year.
What, does the information change year after year?
No, but that's the way it's our Congress people, just chinking up the revenue, whatever.
$6,000 a year. So if you're a 21-year-old guy with same life experience, technology's got to be better now, and you have this idea, you'd have to, your original one, you said you spent, what, $700?
To build that, yeah, that was just personal investment.
Personal investment. Yeah. But if you wanted to get going and selling it, back then you had to get your $700, but also $300 to register it. Now it's $6,000. $6,000.
Yeah.
Just to let them know, hi, my name is Bob Radocy. I work here.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Exactly. Yeah, so it could still be accomplished, but it's a lot harder. So again, it's just a reflection.
It breaks my heart. It really does break my heart because, I mean, for this last hour, we've been drinking and talking about this stuff. Everything you have said has been to answer a problem, to take a challenge. This guy wanted to weightlift. This guy wanted to bow hunt, or this guy wanted to shoot pool. This guy wants, and you create something. You manifest this out of your freaking brain, and you turn it into reality. But instead of exercising your brain and your limited resources to come up and help another guy, you've got to fill out paperwork and pay money to the government. Is that the only regulation you have? Is that $6,000?
That's the only real fee we pay. You know, there's paperwork we have to do. The FDA is pretty rigorous these days. If we get products returned, they have to be documented and on and on. There's a lot of layers of regulation that are there that would inhibit a small company. The other factor is that, you know, we're going to be about a $2 million revenue company this year. And I took that from a $100,000 a year company to, you know, to what it is now. But a company that makes another company that I compete with, let's say, that makes $30-40 million, pays the same fee. So it's just, there's that kind of punch in the face as well, you know.
So I'm starting off with young Bob Radocy, and he has to pay $6,000 for this thing. The competition, you know, they're 30 million as a percentage of what they're bringing in. It's not that much, and it inhibits creativity. Yeah,
it does inhibit creativity, innovation. But it is what it is, and good things are still happening.
I hate that. No, I'm sorry. I hate it. It is what it is. That's why the world sucks, is because we accept this crap. And I wonder how many more people would have better lives, and how many more people would manifest their creations if they didn't have to do that stuff.
Well, luckily, you still have people like me in the field that are willing to listen to. I have people call me all the time and share ideas with me. A number of these devices, as I said, came from inspirations of other people. So we've been able to be the vehicle for other people's inspirations. And we're not so anal that we worry about most of the stuff we have isn't patented because the market's so small. I'd burn more money in developing the patent and paying for the patent. I'd rather invest the money into the product and get it out to people and have them use it. Then worry about protecting it.
I know a guy who comes up with medical devices, and he said after Obama, what took one patent now takes 4 patents, to the point where now he's like, I'm just not going to play anymore. I've made enough money. I'll be okay. You think about how many people go without, and what's going to be next. People want to learn more about what you do, how you do it, and maybe there's somebody out there who goes, I need one of these.
I think
where do they go?
Well, you know, the easiest way is to go to the website that we have, which is just TRS, like the right stuff, TRSprosthetics.com. Or they can call me. In Boulder, you can find me.
It's just amazing.
Thank you, John. Amazing. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
All right.
It's been fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.